gorgeous creatures, and welcome to another episode of On the Couch with Krazy Chaz. Yes, Krazy Chaz, known to my friends, colleagues, and clients just being a little bit fabulous. We all need a little bit of fabulous in our lives. In today's episode, we're going to be chatting about all the tricks and tips if you're thinking about doing your own DIY stationery. Don't forget to click like and subscribe underneath with notifications to let you know when our next fab episode is going to be airing. First place to start is to define your style. Now this is very important because this is going to give a whole look and feel to your entire wedding, and you just want to give the right message, the right feel, and what suits you the best. You need to define if it's going to be elegant and classic. Are you going to go with relaxed and chilled? Are you going to go with something very ultra modern and glam? You need to decide what your style is before. A great place to start is Pinterest. Create a mood board. See what works, see what doesn't work. Are you going for in the country? Are you going for urban glam? You need to define this, and I know I've said this, but you need to define clearly what you want to do. Otherwise you're going to land up with this mishmash of a whole lot of different ideas that don't actually work together. Number 2, define your colors. Now, this is easier said than done. My pink to your best friend's pink, very different. And everyone's perception of color can be so different. And if you don't set this out and define this from the beginning, you're going to get this mishmash of like tones and colors that don't always go together. My advice for color is to use an app called Pantone Color Matching System. All right, I'll put a link to the app down in the description below. With this app, it's going to make your life so much easier. All right, the app allows you to take a photograph and use a color picker to pull any Pantone from the photograph and give you a color swatch. Then that color swatch you can send to your bridal party, to your decor stylist, to your stationer. When you're going out choosing papers or ribbons, you can match the color exactly, which just makes life so much easier. Great way, go have a look at Pinterest. Pinterest is the best and worst thing that could have happened to the wedding industry, but there are a lot of mood boards and colors that you didn't think about putting together that could actually be so fab. For instance, I wasn't a very big fan of yellow until I actually had to do a wedding, and what we did was we paired it with a light and a dark gray, and it just popped for me. And since that wedding, I just love the color yellow. So number 2, define your colors. Traditionally, wedding invitations have been A5 or slightly smaller, but over the years, with trends and just basically defining your own style, anything goes. You can have round invitations, you can have boxed invitations, you can have scalloped, you can have perspex, mirror perspex, see-through perspex. There's so many different options and sizes, so play with your sizes. Another thing to think about when you're looking at size is spacing within the invitation. Remember, don't overcrowd. You want all the information to be read clearly and to be understood. When you put too much information on one page, people just switch off. They don't see the thing. So remember to put the most important facts and the most important information first, and then layer it going backwards. Another important aspect is choosing your words wisely. Now, I can divide this up into two sections. One being the type of font you use, and two, the type of words you actually use. Let's start with fonts. My biggest tip here is only use two fonts. One cursive, curly, fancy, and this should be for all the major headings and not paragraph text. It's very difficult to read cursive in a sort of a paragraph or lots of information. And then the second one, to do a readable paragraph font that is easy for guests to read all the information. All right. Another thing to consider is to keep it all within the same font families. We will be doing another episode where we delve into this a lot more deeply in invitations. But it's the family is just about matching the right curly font with the right serif font, as per se. The second section is choosing your words wisely. Now, this comes down to how you want to honor or not bring in your parents at all. Traditionally, whoever was paying for the wedding, their names normally go first, being the bride's parents normally pay. But in today's world, a lot of bride and grooms are actually paying for their own weddings, and they're not in for all the traditional layouts and formality of traditional invites. And that is okay. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. When you are placing your words, one thing I know is my biggest thing is spelling. I design and I design and I design and I design, and I get to a point where I actually know in my head what needs to be said, and I don't always read what is on the page, which sometimes you miss silly mistakes. Big tip. Proofread. Overread. Get somebody else to proofread. Double check. One of my biggest tips with trying to check for spelling and mistakes is actually to take your invitation and turn it upside down. Right? If you read it upside down, you're actually forced to read what is on the line, and you can pick up mistakes a lot easier. So just remember, choose your words and your fonts carefully. Another big consideration is your dates and your timelines in production. Now, a little trick and tip that I give my students and my clients is the following. Think of your wedding date. Okay, you've got that? Now think of your RSVP date. Now your RSVP date is roughly 4 to 5 weeks before your wedding, depending on when your suppliers and your venue needs all your final numbers. So backtrack that date, your wedding date, 1 month. All right? Then you need to backtrack that date 1 more month, because you need about 8 weeks to give it to the guests so they can plan before the wedding. If it's a destination, you need longer, of course. So take that RSVP date and go back another month. All right? And that is the handout date to the guests. Then you need to consider, okay, we need time for production. So on average, 2 to 3 weeks. So we backtrack that date, 2 to 3 weeks. All right? That is the date when final mock-ups to your station or to yourself has to be done and signed off. But before that, we still need to design it. So backtrack that another 2 to 3 weeks. All right? Because you need the backs and forths and first meetings. We're almost at 3 to 4 months before the wedding just for the invitations. So dates and timelines are a big thing to consider when planning your invitations, either through a stationer or if you're going to be doing them yourself. The next one is count your households. Now, not every single person needs an invitation, so it's one per couple, or you can even go to the extent of one per family if you are doing only print. Digital and websites are completely different, and you can see my tips and advice in episode 1 and also our future episode that we're going to be chatting about websites and invitations in detail. My advice to clients and to students is to take the total number of guests at your wedding. So say 100. Divide by 2, okay, and add 10%. So you're looking at roughly 60 odd invitations for your wedding of 100 people. Then on top of that, add another 10 to 15% in extra material in case there is mistakes or people that you have forgotten about. The B list. Some advice for my clients and my students when we're talking about invitations is always put the names of the invited guests on the envelope or the invitation. This is very important. I know it may seem like a minuscule little thing, but this helps control your numbers and your budget in regard to final seating at your wedding. If you just leave a blanket invitation, who are you inviting? Are you inviting mom, dad, gran, sons, nephews, nieces? The list could go on, and your budget just explodes. So one piece of important advice always to remember with your numbers is always put the names of the people who are invited to the wedding on the invitation. Another way to control your head count is to state if you are going to allow children or not. And it's really okay to say, you know what, this is an adult party, regrettably no children allowed. You know what I mean? So this is one place where you can definitely cut your guest list. Oh, this brings us to another little tricky subject, plus ones. It's really okay, guys, to say no plus ones. You know, you can say it's due to space at the venue, because you just don't want arb faces showing up in your photos and your guest list and increasing your budget for no reason. There's also no harm in inviting a plus one down the line. Say, for instance, your best friend has not seen anybody at the time of the invitations are sent out or when you're planning your invitations, but maybe 2-3 months in, they start to see a significant other, then invite. But you know what? Clearly define this on the invitation or on the envelope and say, if this is for Chaz, invite Chaz. And then categorically state Chaz plus one or Chaz plus partner. All right. Another important point is to remember your entire suite. Not just your invitations when you're buying stock or ordering from your stationery. You might get a better discount for bulk buying than you would do for 1 or 2 pieces. Another thing to remember is that if you're going to be doing your invitations yourself, always remember 10-15% extra in materials in case of the mix-ups or the blupses or the, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Important thing to consider is to buy the stock all at one time. You don't know if they're going to be short on the stock when it comes to your on-day stuff. Also, certain paper runs and color runs are different from one batch to another. So it's important to buy enough stock in the same color, in the right color, so you're also not running back and forth to suppliers and looking for extras last minute, which causes stress and time and money. Layering elements. Now this always brings a sense of luxury to anything that you're doing. If you add a seal or if you add a extra ribbon, it just gives that sort of textural element that just brings up the life and the luxuriousness of your invitation or your on-day stationery. So always consider some kind of embellishment to give it that finishing touch. One big thing I want you to think about is consider your costs and see where your priorities lie. We can get very carried away in doing one mock-up, and it takes us an hour to put it together because we're playing and we're having fun and we're layering and we're putting all these things, and one mock-up can cost us 200-300 rand, and we only see it like that until we have to multiply that out by 10, 15, 20, 100 invitations. So it's very important to consider your costs and see what you can get or where you can cut to get the same look and feel that you're after. You want to create something really unique and get a local artist to create a background that you'll be using going forward. You may also consider speaking to a graphic designer to create you a monogram that you can use in all your elements on your on-day, on your floor decals, on your menus, and all your bits and pieces that you're going to use for your wedding. There are many different printing techniques that you consider, either doing it yourself or doing it through a stationer. So you can think of things like embossing and letterpress, which is really, really stunning. Then you have to look at the grammage of your paper and the cardstock that you're going to be using. You can use tassels and ribbons and buttons and beading and glittery. These all add to your overall look, but the more you add, the more cost you're going to have. So this is something to consider. Another great tip is to know your paper, and if your paper is going to work with your printer at home if you decide to print at home. Now, a big thing here is when you're going out and choosing your papers to know what grammage of paper or the weight or the thickness of your paper is before you start. If you are going to print from home, know that most home printers can't do more than 180 to maybe 190 grams. GSM, that's grams per square meter. There is absolutely no point in buying this absolutely fabulous grammage and weighted paper and it doesn't go through your printer. In the same line, also find local printers that can handle grammage, because 9 out of 10 times local printers cannot handle a grammage over 250 to 300 grams. Unless you're going to be sending to professional printers or lighter printers where the weight doesn't matter. If you're considering embossing or letterpressing, also remember that you need to go with a higher grammage paper, 300 to 400 grams, to get that richness and depth and effect that you want to get out of the letterpress and embossing. Another consideration for DIY invitations if you're printing at home is the amount of ink you're going to be using. If you're using a completely colored background, remember ink costs money too. And remember, your first run to your last run might be completely different depending if you are on laser or an inkjet. So at the end of the day, cost and just peace of mind, it's sometimes better to go to your local print shop and get the professionals to print it for you. You can cut and assemble the way you want to save money that way. There is no harm in that, but I would consider your local print shop. Don't stress if you're not a designer. There are so many templates out there that you can use and redesign and reshape to fit your own needs. I know I have an Etsy store with all online templates. Have a squiz, I've left the link in the description below. Make sure you have the right editing software to edit the template. Otherwise, maybe invest a little bit in getting the creator of the template to design it accordingly. Off-the-shelf designs are much cheaper than creating bespoke designs, and this is one way to save costs. Back to timelines, you must also remember how long it's going to take you to distribute your invitations. Now, most of the world you could probably post, and you would get it between maybe 3 to 5 working days. Here in South Africa, we don't trust the post as much, and we normally hand deliver most of our invitations. So also consider how long is this going to take you to go to each of the people or each of your guests and hand out your invitation. So that must also be taken into consideration when you're doing your planning and your timelines. Tracking your RSVPs is very important. Make sure that you've got some kind of spreadsheet or list or management tool that will help you capture all of these details. Also remember to thank your guests once they have RSVP, to put their minds at ease, to say, yes, we got your RSVP, thanks a mil, we'll see you on the day. Big thing that I stress to my clients and to my students is thank yous for the gifts from the wedding. It just shows a level of etiquette and class to go back and say a personalized thank you to your guest for attending the wedding and for the wonderful gift that they have given you. You don't know what it means to them. It just makes a world of difference. My biggest tip when doing DIY invitations or doing this as a business is take your time. Give yourself time. Time can be your biggest friend or your worst foe. So my worst projects come out of when I am rushed and I've left everything to the last minute. So my biggest piece of advice throughout this whole episode is give yourself time to breathe and enjoy the experience, either doing the invitations yourself or taking the time to do it with an experienced stationer. A big point, if you have decided to not tackle the DIY invitation and to go through a stationer, is do your homework. Find somebody that you're going to work with, because you're going to be with that stationer through your entire wedding process. It's probably the one supplier that you will spend the most time with. You do invitations, you do save the date, websites, on day, staging backgrounds. I know with my clients, choose somebody you can work with, choose somebody you enjoy working with, which is very, very important, because your time is precious and so is your emotional well-being. All right, this brings us to the end of this episode. I hope you've had fun with me. I hope we've given you some insights and tricks, some thoughts to think about when doing your own DIY invitations and stationery. Remember, all the links to the PDF documents on this entire episode, the document on envelope sizes and invitation sizes, see the links below. Also the link to our Etsy store for templates, some great off-the-shelf templates. Have a look there. All right, if you've liked what we've done in this episode, please give us a like, 2 thumbs up, hit subscribe, click that notification bell so you know when our next episode is going to be aired. Okay, my lovelies, that's it for now. Stay gorgeous.